Christmas, New Year, new pop screen. We are the Geek Show podcast dedicated to the good, the bad, and the preposterous of movies, either starring about or by pop stars, with a full range of musical and cinematic genres from country and western to hip hop, documentaries to science fiction. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a filmmaker and film critic for Horrified, the British horror website, as well as the Geek Show, where I do film reviews and classic Doctor Who reviews on our Patreon. I am joined this week by...
You're joined by Mark Cunliffe. I also write for The Geek Show. I write for We Are Cults. I write for Arrow. I write some booklet essays for various Arrow films. And I've got a chapter in Scarred for Life Volume 2, which is available now from lulu.com.
You do, indeed. We should probably plug our Letterboxd pages as well, in case there's anyone new listening.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just at Graham Williamson. You can search for Graham Williamson and find me there.
Yeah, if you look for Mark Cunliffe, I should be there as well. Yeah.
Well, there are many noble reasons for making a feature film. 3 of the noblest include immortalising a classic performance, delivering a stark message on modern society, or doing an old Disney cartoon, but it's CGI now, so it's better. The noblest of them all, however, has to be you've got a load of British and Irish rock stars together for a tour in a country that is currently in the grip of civil war, and you have just realised that that's a bad idea insurance-wise, and you need to get them to do something. That was the impetus behind our film this week, Straight to Hell, Alex Cox's follow-up to Sid and Nancy, which united Joe Strummer, Elvis Costello, Grace Jones, Courtney Love, and the Pogues in a spaghetti western-inflected story of fleeing bank robbers falling foul of coffee-addicted bandits. Surprisingly, on release, the resulting film was determined to be a bit rum.
Yeah, quite a surprise, that, isn't it? I think the first thing we've got to sort of address, if we're going straight into it, is the cast, because it's an exceptional cast.
It's an extraordinary cast. Yeah,
he had like Strummer, Costello, the Pogues. They were all supposed to be going to Nicaragua, weren't they?
Yes, to do benefit
concert tour for the Sandinistas.
Yeah.
But that went pear-shaped. Then they just decided to go to Almere and make a film.
Yes.
A film that took 3 days to write and 5 weeks to make, if I believe is correct.
I think there is some controversy over whether it took 3 days to write or 4 days to write. This is one of the main bones of contention in Straight to Hell scholarship.
24 hours makes all the difference, doesn't it?
What a difference a day makes, as the song says. Yes,
indeed. But not only those rock luminaries, but you've also got Dennis Hopper.
Yeah,
some regular Cox performers from his repertory company. So you've got Miguel Sandoval,
yes,
Jennifer Balgoban, thank you. I'm never sure how to pronounce her name. I can see it in my head, and then I think, is that right, Balgoban? But yeah, we'll go with that. Who else? Kathy Burke, Dick Rude, yeah. Cy Richardson,
the great Cy Richardson. Yeah, he's wonderful.
Courtney Love, as I think we mentioned at the top there.
Indeed,
Grace Jones,
yes. Yeah.
Kathy Burke, Michelle Winstanley, Sarah Sugarman. Ed Tudor Pole,
of course, yes. Doing what I think legally might just qualify as an American accent.
Just about, I think. Yeah. Xander Barkley, another Cox luminary. It's a stacked, eccentric cast. Oh, Jim Jarmusch. Pops up as well, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. And he's right at the back end of the film, isn't he?
Yeah.
Jim Jarmusch. He's playing essentially the same role that Bill Murray plays in Jim Jarmusch's film, The Limits of Control, I thought.
Right.
He's a canny magpie, Jarmusch. I think he might have filed that away for future reference.
Yeah, definitely. And Graham Fletcher Cook, who was Dexter Fletcher's brother as well.
Really?
Yeah, he gets the 2 roles, doesn't he? He plays Whitey that gets lynched in the town square, and then later he's Whitey's brother.
I can see the resemblance, but it never clicked that he was Dexter Fletcher's brother.
Yeah, he's like a blonde Dexter Fletcher, isn't he?
He is, yes.
Yeah.
It's quite
He
odd
passed
that.
away recently, I believe.
Oh, did he? That's a
Yeah, I
shame.
think so. Yeah, I think so.
Did Dexter Fletcher ever work with Alex Cox?
Uh, Nothing's springing to mind. He may well have done, and it may not have been on my radar, but nothing's springing to mind.
It's quite
He did
odd that.
Jarman, didn't he? He did Caravaggio with
Yes,
Derek
yeah.
Jarman.
I would have thought that Cox would have been Fletcher's kind of director because he seemed to be making a sort of round tour of weirdo directors of the 1980s, like say Jarman.
Absolutely.
He works with David Lynch.
Yeah, the Elephant Man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's strange. It's not. I mean, unless we're having a complete mind blank, and there is something he's in, but nothing's springing to mind at the minute.
It's very easy to forget the cast of an Alex Cox film because, as you say, there are so many people here, and all of them are people who you would not imagine were ever in the same room, let alone the same film.
Basically, is it a film or is it a holiday, though? That's my big thing about whenever I've watched Straight to Hell. Is this a film or is this just some really expensive holiday home movie?
I think the most interesting piece of evidence from that perspective is there's a deleted scene where Elvis Costello's butler character is
Hives,
tied. Hives the butler. He's tied to a chair and whipped by his then wife, Kate O'Riordan from the Pogues. And you think, I mean, either Elvis Costello got the bad end of the stick here, or he got the very, very good end of the stick, depending on his personal kind of...
depending on his preferences,
yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is this, on the credits, you'll find there's a sex and cruelty consultant for the film. Yes. Martin Taylor. So I imagine that was a significant part of just that one scene, I guess. But
yes, it's very true. It is. I haven't seen everything Cox has directed, but I feel like this might be his most weirdly horny film.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of it's a lot of people sort of washed up in a certain place and suddenly finding the strangest of bedfellows, really, I guess.
Yes, yeah.
And it's a bit simmering under the Almiran heat.
Yeah, I think there is a point to it, and I think the sexual frustration of it means something. But I must admit, when Jennifer Balkavan started washing that motorcycle, I did think, you're just entertaining yourself now, Alex, there, are you?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting scene.
It is. It has its charms, I will put it that way.
Even Michelle Winstanley in like the most amazing outfit.
And it's a whole film full of amazing outfits, isn't it?
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Yeah.
I'm very fond of Fox Harris's white suit that he puts on when he sings Delilah.
Yeah. It's in my repertoire. Plus, of course, sorry.
Have you seen the behind the scenes documentary about this, by the way?
Yes.
Isn't Fox Harris exactly the guy you want him to be?
Yeah, it's exactly what you see is what you get, isn't it? It's exactly what you'd expect from him. Yeah.
I like to imbue my roles with a certain frisson. Amazing.
It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But also, if we're on about costumes, we've got to point out the Pogues play and everybody gets the pronunciation wrong, but I think it's supposed to be McMahon, isn't it, or McMahon? I'm not sure.
McMahon would be a good Pogues in joke, I think.
Yeah, I think so as well, but it seems to be that everybody pronounces it slightly differently in the film. Yeah, let's call them McMahon. Yeah, I think that probably sounds the right one, doesn't it? They wear mariachi costumes.
Yes.
Which is a brilliant aesthetic, but you get the idea of there's an Irish folky rock punk band who aren't really Irish, now dressed as a mariachi band in Spain.
It's a lot, as they say, yes.
It is a lot, isn't it?
And the introduction of them is so chaotic. And I must admit, the introduction was the one point where Straight to Hell had a very bad reception on release. And the introduction of the McMahones was the bit where I thought, the critics might have had a point, because it's so squabbling and chaotic that it becomes kind of annoying.
Yeah, every single person is doing. I mean, I've worked in community theatre and agitprop, and it's literally that. Every single person is doing their own little bit of acting.
Yeah.
At exactly the same time, and it doesn't correspond with what anybody else is doing.
Yes.
So you've got Elvis Costello tottering around with the drinks tray, doing, "Oh, look at me, I'm a refined aesthetic Englishman," while everybody else is like going and shooting and going yeehaw and all that kind of stuff. It's just, it's an unbearable opening. If you can get past how slapdash amateur that is.
It's quite
and it's a shame because the setup before it is quite professional, isn't it? It's the gang, Richardson, Strummer, Rude, and Courtney Love. That's quite a professional looking setup, that opening those opening scenes. But it's only when you get to the actual spaghetti western town that the Pogues turn up and everything. That's then just chaos. And then it's followed by Ed Tudor-Pole chewing the scenery, something appallingly, and as you say,
so out of character for him as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's such a subtle, refined performer, isn't he? God, he is dreadful in this. It's good. It's only a very short scene because it is utterly dreadful.
So this is one of those things that I think you have to talk about with Straight to Hell, because it was probably, I mean, there's hints of it in Repo Man, but it's probably the first indication that most people will have picked up on something very, very central to Alex Cox's personality, which is that, man, does he ever love spaghetti westerns.
Yeah. He really does. This is supposed to be based on Django Kill, isn't it? Or it's a homage to Django Kill.
It's got a few shots in it, like the arm coming from the grave, where you can see that, I think. Yeah.
I was going to say, I've seen Django Kill, but a very, very long time ago. And all I can remember about Django Kill is that it is batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And if his way of doing a homage is, let's make a film that's also spaghetti western and also batshit crazy, then job done. He's done that.
It's a fair point. Yeah, I think there is also this kind of weird sex undertone to Django Kill that is kind of unusual in spaghetti westerns. There's a sense that everyone in it is hiding some sort of kink that is bubbling to the surface. And I think that's a fair thing to compare Straight to Hell to.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't really get many homosexual characters in a spaghetti western, do you? You get camp characters.
Yeah.
And you get sort of sexually repressed aesthetes, I guess.
But ones that are actually...
The villain in... I was going to say the villain in Sabata is a great example of that sexually repressed aesthete. He's very almost like a Bond villain.
Yeah.
But not outwardly homosexual.
No, that's very unusual. And it's quite strange to me that loving spaghetti westerns so much, and he, it's not a figure of speech. He literally wrote the book on them. There is an Alex Cox book about spaghetti westerns.
So many thousand ways to die in the West. Is that what it's called?
I think so. Yeah, I can't remember exactly how many ways.
I do have it as well. I'm not sure where it's on my bookshelf somewhere. I do have it, but I can't remember the title.
Why don't I have it? Let me just look this up. Yeah, 10,000 Ways to Die, a director's take on the spaghetti western.
Yeah, it's a good book. It's a nice. It's one of those that if you hear a spaghetti western title and you go, "Oh, I'm not sure about that," it's a great pull it down, find it in the index, read about the making of it, read about what his opinion of it is. It's a nice little review book.
And it's quite weird, really, thinking that he has this deep love for spaghetti westerns, and his main sort of approach to directing them in this film seems to be, let's never have a second silence. You know, has there ever been a good spaghetti western with a pause in it? I think not.
That's true. I had thought of that actually. Yeah, it is wall to wall obnoxious sound, really, isn't it? And there's none of that Leone pause or anything like that. Or and even when he tries to do great wide angle shots with like all the protagonists in it, it's slapdash. There's a boom mic visible. I think it's the scene where Ed Tudor Pole and his posse come in. You could see, and everybody's all lined up in that great sort of Leone sort of stance. You can see a boom mic just bobbing up and down in the top right corner.
I'll have to go back to that. I missed that.
It's really distracting, and you think somebody who really knows his stuff would be on it. I mean, it can't have anything to do with the copious amounts of wine and grass that was being bandied around the set, can it?
It's almost like making a film on holiday with a bunch of hard drinking rock stars is a bit of a bad way to just get a coherent film.
Just a bad idea, yeah. It is just a holiday movie, isn't it? I mean, I've got a couple of quotes here. There's a great one from Kathy Burke, which says, straight to shit's what I call it. Bollocks. A great laugh, but that's what the film looked like. Look at us having a laugh. But it was fantastic, sitting up on a mountain with Elvis Costello.
So, okay, greatest living English woman or merely one of the greatest living English womans? Where do we stand on Kathy Burke?
Oh, greatest living English woman.
I would agree. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
There's also a good quote from Shane McGowan, which goes, the best thing about it was 5 weeks paid holiday in southern Spain. Fucking brilliant. And you can almost hear after it, can't you?
His radio static laugh.
Yes. The white noise mirth strikes again.
And I think there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, it's the sort of film that you direct when you want to have great stories about filmmaking rather than a great film.
Yeah, I mean, it's a barrier for an audience. I can see why a lot of people hate this film, because you're watching people having a laugh, as Kathy Burke says, and as literally says, and as Shane McGowan sort of alludes to. It is them having a party, and that can either be viewed as self-indulgent, or it can be viewed as kind of like, God, I wish I was there, or or just enjoying the actual anarchic, eccentric, post-punk ride of it all, I guess.
And there are bits of it which I think even the movie's harshest critics admit are actually kind of inspired, like the bit with Xander Schloss as the hot dog salesman.
The wiener guy, yeah. I don't know if we're going to give the thing away, but there's a great scene near the end, isn't there, where he's like, I don't have much, but I've got a will to do this. Please let me be in your gang. And it's like as the townsfolk are all about to fight one another, and they just look at him and then shoot him.
Yes.
I mean, you just don't expect that, do you? You think, right, okay, he's going to join them, and then there'll be a noble sacrifice where he'll just sort of like walk out and die in a hail of bullets. But no, they don't even let him join. They just die. They just kill him in a hail of bullets straight away.
I think that final act is where the film's genre identity becomes a bit clearer. You're not quite sure if it's a spoof for about 2/3 of the runtime, but I think the ending is spoofy enough to make it work.
Yeah, definitely. It's a weird... I mean, I always say Tarantino definitely watched this and nicked a lot from it.
Yes.
Just from the way that Richardson, Strummer and Root are dressed for a start, which is Reservoir Dogs. It's certainly, I would certainly go to bat to say that Richardson and Strummer are basically Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta in Pulp Fiction.
The Sam Jackson thing is extraordinary. They're even wearing like a similar wig. Yeah.
It's just obvious, really. I mean, and as you say, you mentioned Jarmusch being a magpie. I mean, Tarantino's the biggest magpie of them all, isn't he?
No kidding. Yeah.
So I mean, that's definitely there. So but you can kind of live with it because this is a film that has so many homages going on.
Yeah.
That it's going to be inevitable that you're going to homage the homage. Is that right?
Yes. That you're going to end up accidentally homaging something that hasn't been made yet in a bizarre causality accident. Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Yeah. I mean, is it worth trying to mention the plot of this? Is there a plot? No, not really.
No, basically, I think that the loosest setup for it that you can get is that Strummer, Rude Richardson, and Love rob a bank. They try to get away, and they end up in this bizarre, isolated town, which is basically. I was trying to work this out because a lot of articles on Straight to Hell say that it's an anachronistic film, which I don't think is quite right. I think Cox's next film, Walker, definitely
That's an anachronistic film, yeah. I don't think Straight to Hell is anachronistic. I think it's supposed to be set in the 80s.
Yes, yeah.
I don't think we're pretending this is like early 20th century Mexico or something like that. It's 80s Mexico. It's just like a ghost town, isn't it? It's like the town that time forgot kind of thing.
I think that's kind of the gag of it, that their getaway is so successful and they go so far off the map that they end up somewhere that still runs by the logic of old spaghetti western ghost towns.
Yeah. Or is it just hell itself?
Perhaps.
There's a lot of interesting stuff going on when they come across that car, and I don't know if it's Dick Rude or Courtney Love say it looks exactly like our car. It's crashed and there's dead people inside it, and Strummer immediately goes, no, it looks nothing like our car, and then it's picked up again later, and you kind of think, well, are they dead? Is this some sort of ghostly a literal ghost town?
It's got a lot of interesting religious imagery in it. Probably the most famous one is the crucifix at the end with the little skeleton tied to it. Which reminded me slightly of like maybe the monkey that gets tied to a cross in Herzog's Even Dwarves Started Small. Maybe that died and they're just still carrying it around. I don't know.
It's a brilliant aesthetic, though, isn't it? It's very striking. I think it's the cover of the DVD as well.
It is, So it's certainly the cover of the one I've got.
Yeah, so that's it is a striking shot, definitely. But even the town itself is a ghost town when you think about it, because it's an old spaghetti western town. I think it was built for a Charles Bronson film.
I was going to say a Charles Bronson movie. Yeah, I can't remember.
I've heard it being called Chino, but as with a lot of spaghetti westerns, it's probably got a dozen different English language names.
Yes. Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Chino is the one I think I've heard. But I'm sure I heard Joe Strummer say something differently on an interview once.
Yeah. Like you say, it's sort of how can you say what the definite name of a spaghetti western is? They were all retitled 1,000 times.
Absolutely, yeah. So it could be any it could be any name really, and I don't know if I've seen that particular film, but it's a striking looking location. And yeah, I mean it is a self-indulgent movie, but who wouldn't want to be in a town like that and say, okay, go and play cowboys?
Exactly.
You'd love it, wouldn't you? You'd love that opportunity. So I can't really begrudge them.
Yeah,
I can't say lucky bastards, but I can't begrudge them the opportunity to just dick about on a living set.
Although it is like a completely different film in terms of style and tone and narrative, it did remind me of those travelogue films that Wim Wenders would occasionally do, like Tokyo Ga or Lisbon Story.
Ah, right, yeah.
I think the crucial difference is that when Wenders made those films, he'd already established himself. He'd already made like about 10 major art house successes, including Paris, Texas, and Wings of Desire.
Yeah.
Whereas Cox made this when he'd done Edge City, which was his thesis film, which didn't get a commercial release. He'd done Repo Man, which did get a commercial release, but was buried because the studio were absolutely appalled by it. And he'd done Sid and Nancy, which was a hit. And I think this would have been much more fondly looked at if it wasn't the latest work by that hot new director you've only just heard of.
You've only just heard of. It's timing is everything, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you do Repo Man, it gets buried, as you say, but then you do Sid and Nancy, and then people are forced to sort of go, who is this guy? And they look at Repo Man, and suddenly that's becoming a cult after only a brief sort of release period, really, isn't it? A couple of years after it's been made, and suddenly it's becoming a cult. So you're eager to think, what's he going to do next? And he does a genuine out there piss up captured on celluloid.
And it's funny because one of the main reasons why he did this was because, as we say, we had a hole in his schedule. It wasn't just that the tour had fell through, although that was a major thing, but also Walker, his next American film, was taking ages to set up and move through the system.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it is worth thinking about, isn't it? If Walker had come out as the follow-up to Sid and Nancy, would it still have been, I think, unjustly monstered, or would there be a sense of, well, I don't like everything in it, but you can see the genius who directed Sid and Nancy is still at work here?
Yeah, it's an interesting what if, isn't it? Because you kind of think it was never going to be warmly received, certainly not in America.
No.
It was never going to be warmly received in that regard. But would it have, or was it just the thing that nobody could tolerate the idea of an anachronistic Western? You know, who knows? Whether the knives are going to be out anyway, whether because it came out after this, people were saying, "Oh God, he's doing another bloody Western," you know?
Yeah.
But maybe, who knows, if he had done Walker first, this might have been looked upon more fondly.
Perhaps,
might have said, "Oh well, this is just the after show party kind of thing. Let's just give him his bit of frivolity, enjoy it," you know. Because he's got our he's got our benefits of the doubt at this stage. But I think Walker's a brilliant movie.
Walker is great. I would like it if people listen to this and watch Straight to Hell, because I think it's a lot of fun, but I need more people to watch Walker.
Yeah, I think if we were trying to persuade listeners, viewers, whatever, I would say try and watch them both. You know, just double up, just get them both, you know, and just see what you think. But Walker's a great movie, and especially if you've got our kind of politics, then it's a very good movie. If you're not going to be liking that film if you're a Donald Trump supporter.
Although you never know, because one of the most incredible things about Republicans at the moment for me is that you give them a couple of years after a Republican president leaves office and it turns out that no one actually voted for him.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah.
So maybe, maybe Trump supporters, maybe if we could get them over onto the Sandinista side with a few screenings of Walker, maybe we could do that.
You never know. Great performance by Ed Harris as well in Walker, has to be said.
I think it's one of those, again, a film that has a really solid cast. Ed Harris is great in it. Marley Matlin is great in it. And around the edges, you still have the Cox gang, including quite a few people who were in this film as well. Yeah,
Strummer pops up, doesn't he? Strummer with a beard, which is almost unrecognizable, really. But he was quite an interesting actor, Joe Strummer. I don't think that gets spoken about often enough. But when you think how much of his persona was he playing at the best of times, it's a man who was called Woody to begin with, to sort of pay homage to Woody Guthrie and be a bit of a folky, and then suddenly a down and dirty Cockney rebel. But all the while you've got to think he was an ambassador's son or a diplomat's son or something, So it's, there's a lot of play acting in him, which I think does mean that he's quite impressive in this film.
Yeah.
Not an amazing award-winning actor by any stretch of the imagination, but he can say a line and you don't wince. There's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
pop stars and rock stars who can't do that.
Yes. I mean, there
Jane McGowan.
there is an element where I think the size of the cast here worked against him, because if you were like an LA talent agent and you were trying to persuade someone to take a chance on Joe Strummer in a film, would you be going around to someone going, "Oh, you watch Straight to Hell? He plays the guy in a suit with greasy hair." No, not that one. The other one. No, not that one either. Or that one.
He does have a great thing, just the greasy hair thing. He does have a great scene where he's got a can of castor
Pomade,
oil,
isn't it? Yeah.
and he
Oh,
just sort
yeah.
of he just puts the just drips it over the comb and then combs it through. Just GT, just.
I mean, it's one of those
Brilliant.
things where if we are talking about this in terms of the history of pop movies, you have to say that this is one of the many cases where someone has thought, the film with all those pop stars in it, I can't see how this could possibly lose money. This is like the golden example of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even a cult, is it, really? I mean,
Not so much, no.
It's
Walker
a
is a
curio.
cult film.
Walker's a cult film, definitely, yeah. This is just a weird curio, and maybe it still needs... I remember reading... I think the first time I heard about it must be about 20 years ago. I used to read... I don't know if it was Hot Dog. I think it might have been Hot Dog magazine, for anybody who remembers Hot Dog magazine, which was a great magazine, but sort of died a death by... you knew it was dying when literally there was more adverts for Dial 0898 for Busty Blondes. There was just gradually the back pages were becoming more and more, and the film reviews were becoming less and less. You think, yeah, they're really running out of money at this stage. But yeah, there was I think it was Hot Dog. There was a massive piece about it in Hot Dog.
Yeah.
And I just thought, God, what's this film? I've got to see this film, I remember because I used to take the magazine into work, and it was just being passed around, like saying, oh God, no, I've never heard of this. But they had Kathy Burke's in it. There's this weird sort of buzz about this film that we'd never heard of. But just reading it from and trying to piece it together from the magazine, and then seeing whether you could get it on video or DVD.
I remember reading a fair bit about Cox in magazines around like the early noughties. Uncut were always beating the drum for him as well.
It might have been Uncut rather than Hot Dog, actually.
Yeah,
it might have been Uncut. Yeah.
And I got my DVD of this film from a magazine that I don't think I ever bought again. I was already an Alex Cox fan, so I thought, oh, I got a chance to get Straight to Hell. It was in a magazine called Total DVD, which...
All right, that rings a bell, yeah.
And it's truth in advertising, because I did get a Total DVD with it. It wasn't like half of Straight to Hell. They lived up to their name.
You weren't phoning Trace descriptions afterwards.
No.
I bought Total DVD and I've only got half a DVD.
I think Trace descriptions was the one phone line they didn't have an advert for in the back.
The back pages. It was the only one that wasn't 0898. That was a weird time for those magazines. I remember it was like, when you get your Nokia 3310, it was sort of like, download this pixelated picture of some page 3 stunner. So random shite that they put in the back of them, but they were tanking money, those magazines at the time, weren't they? It was such a short boom and bust for those type of film
like
magazines.
Film and culture magazines. Yeah. I understand it being a hard time, although I would love to know how it became this industry-wide belief that the one industry that we should hitch our star to with a phone sex lines business, because that's never going to become obsolete, right? That's always going to be the most common thing.
But what were they thinking about us poor film lovers? They're going to... 2 o'clock in the morning, they're finished watching Godfather 3 or something. They're going to have a wank, aren't they? They need cheering up, for God's sake.
I mean, I've been a subscriber to 14 Times for about 25 years now, and even during the noughties, there were not many wank lines in the 14 Times ads. I think what you can get certain other like dubious things, self-published books by crackpots, I think is what keeps the 14 Times advertising division afloat.
Definitely. This, I mean, it's too inherently small a mystery for 14 Times. It's what are you wearing? You know, there's nothing. they've got bigger things at stake, haven't they? There's more mysteries in the world than that, I think.
Definitely, yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's not. Before we went down this this sidetrack of wank phone numbers,
it always gets like this when you're on this show.
I know. I'm sorry, listeners. I'm sorry, viewers. It's just me dicking about, really. Much like the film itself, it's just people dicking about on camera.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a cult film. It's still, even now, what, 30 odd years after it was released, it still hasn't really found an audience who are willing to embrace it.
And it's
so
odd
it's
because
still a bit of a curio.
I mean, I get it because it is a very rough, very alienating kind of film in a lot of ways, but there are a lot of things in it, like, as you say, the Tarantino connection, where you can look at it and say, this came before that, and it gives you a bit more context to enjoy it in. I don't think anyone was really talking about spaghetti westerns in the late 80s. If they were doing it very quietly.
Yeah, I think it's sort of, although I think it's more, I mean, just looking at Blu-ray releases, it's more popular now, I think. There's a lot of spaghetti westerns getting released and getting dusted down and appreciated. And I mean, they're very easy to, I mean, Stuart Lee is a huge fan of spaghetti westerns, and he says, you know, he literally, I think he said something about watching Once Upon a Time in the West as a teenager and missing part of it, and he didn't get round to seeing it properly until like he was in France a few years later and saw it in a cinema. So I mean, they were rare as hen's teeth for a bit, but now, you know, there's these channels like Movies for Men on, you know, cable, which again sounds like another wank sort of thing, doesn't it? It's like
really does. I think they've rebranded that, because I did occasionally like say, oh man, I saw Kioma last night. Oh, what channel? Movies for Men. And as soon as you say it, it's just like, now hear me out on this.
Yeah, you've got to sort of, you've got to then explain yourself, haven't you?
Yeah.
But yeah, they were always like war films or macaroni combat films, and then spaghetti westerns. It just seemed to be wall to wall, those, weren't there?
Yeah.
And I think if you've got an Amazon Prime account now, there's a load of spaghetti westerns there that are just free to view.
Yeah.
Not the greatest prints, you know, they're not. Amazon Prime haven't sort of like tidied them up in any respect. They look like they're shot through your mum's tights, you know, and the sound might be a bit like you've got tinnitus, or you know, you might not get the right subtitles. But these are rare films, and quite often they're a very good time as well. Again, if you're politically inclined, a good spaghetti western is always has something a bit more damning to say about the state of the world, perhaps than, even more so than social realism films, really.
Well, it's one of those things, isn't it, where the American westerns have to bite their tongue a bit about issues like, you know, the Indian Wars being a genocide, because they are made by Americans for an American audience.
Yeah, they do, don't they? American films, because, you know, they can't really wag the finger at the problem of capitalism.
Yeah. Yes.
It's not a big let's attack capitalism movie, is it? Although the suits do come in at the end, but there's no, I mean, it's a film about coffee. I mean, I suppose coffee is supposed to be, you know, I don't know. Is it a motif for drugs? Is it a motif for gold?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I suppose Westerns are a kind of materialistic genre that everyone is always after something, and coffee is just an absurd reflection of that, maybe.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that the interesting anti-business, anti-capitalist, capitalism is evil device in this film is Dennis Hopper's character,
Yes,
Farben.
yeah, he's called IG Farben, a name that Cox had previously used in a deleted scene for Repo Man, but which more significantly is named after the chemical company which manufactured the gas used in the Holocaust.
Yeah, I mean that is. I don't know how many people pick up on that. I think again, you've got to know a bit of
Yeah,
world events and history to sort of get, or just be of a certain political mindset to get that. But that's this sort of subtle knowing wink wink in joke that Cox is sort of operating on, I guess.
yes, yeah. And, you know, at his best, that's a real strength. Repo Man is full of little Easter eggs and references to William S. Burroughs, and
Yeah.
there's Scientology reference in here as well, isn't there? Actually, he seemed to. I had to rewind it a couple of times, but there's an early scene with the robbers, and Courtney Love is screaming something over the top of the dialogue because it's a scene with Courtney Love in. But one of them definitely says something about Scientology.
Yeah, it does ring a vague bell, but perhaps because Courtney Love is screaming over the top of it, I can't quite remember it. I mean, she is obnoxious in this film. Truly obnoxious. I mean, most people would say Courtney Love is obnoxious anyway, but she is incredibly obnoxious in this film. The one scene I really like her in is when she meets Sarah Sugarman's character, who's this weird sort of androgynous. It's almost like Wally made as a human, really, isn't it? She sort of runs about picking things up, doesn't she?
Yes.
It can only stick to the script, I think. Whereas I don't Sarah Sugarman is sticking to the script. Or she's just not used to that kind of performance in front of her. It's very like, what the hell? What? But yeah, my God, she screams a hell of a lot in this film, doesn't she?
It is a weird thing with Courtney Love that a lot of the opprobrium that was later heaped on her is something that when you look back at the start of her career, it feels almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like not in a bad way, not like it's her fault, but she auditioned for the role of Nancy Spungen in Sid and Nancy, which is like it's almost too much, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's a weird, like I say, I mean, you mentioned before the chaos of the initial introduction scene of the gang, the Matt Mahone gang, and I said that it's that the conflicting performance styles. It's very much a film that is continuously conflicting performance styles.
Conflicting performance styles, the motion picture, I think would be a viable alternative title.
I mean, you got Miguel Sandoval, he's sort of like he's the stereotype of the town bank clerk or the town hardware store clerk or whatever, but he's playing it with Clint Eastwood's voice.
Yeah, yes.
So he's there, his little, well, he's basically got a bit of my facial hair, and the center parting thing going on, and the little wiring glasses. But he's like, "Yeah, get off your horse." Is that Clint Eastwood voice?
Yeah, I
you just don't. There's a lot of interesting choices going on.
I think two of the most interesting choices that we haven't mentioned, there is a bit towards the beginning where Norwood, Cy Richardson's character, comes into town with the rest of his gang, and they're still wearing their Reservoir Dogs suits. But he puts on like this pink and blue floral hat,
I
which
love
is
that
never
scene.
mentioned again, as
I
far as
love
I
that
could
scene.
tell.
It's the proper Leone Three Strangers into Town walk on, isn't
Yes.
it? And then he
Yeah.
just pulls out what looks like a fucking shower cap
Yes.
for an old dear. Just, yep, that's that. I'm sorted now. I am too cool for school.
And it's great because it's like, I assume the idea is he's wearing it to provoke a fight. It's like Begbie's tank top, isn't it? It's something that is just begging someone to start something with him.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of urban macho situationism, isn't
Yes.
it? Let's see what I can provoke here.
The other great performance stuff that I think we haven't mentioned, the bit on the balcony with Jem Finer, who is now, of course, a very fine composer, does the soundtrack to a lot of Andrew Cotting's films. But Jem Finer as Grandpa McMahon and Kathy Burke, is that, or is that not a prototype of Wayne and Waynetta slob?
I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Definite vibes there, I think.
We've also not mentioned how bloody funny this film can be as well at times. Again, you might have to be of a certain mindset, but there are some really daft funny moments in it. Like, pushing Grandpa off the balcony in full view of everybody,
Yes.
and then just blaming the character of Whitey as he comes into town and then lynching him into
Yes.
There's a great bit where Joe Strummer just picks a rock up and throws it at him. It's just a spectacular shot where he's half talking about. It just cracks me up.
It's like a hair away. I suppose this is the parody aspect. It is a hair away from how ridiculously unjust most actual westerns could be. Like, I rewatched Johnny Guitar recently for the Geek Show, which is a masterpiece of a film, one of the greatest westerns ever made. And you know what, though? I'm not sure Mercedes McCambridge has built the case that Joan Crawford is hiding that bandit with the legal rigor that I expect from her.
You see, this is it. People think, westerns should be sort of po-faced, but some of them have just, just, especially spaghetti westerns, and as you say, westerns like Johnny Guitar, which were just utterly eccentric, not what people expected whatsoever.
Yeah.
There is some weird sort of subversive elements in it that I think were magnified in spaghetti westerns, and then later in this, of course. I think they're brought to the fore, definitely.
I think maybe without wanting to downplay the things in it that are wrong and that do go wrong, and the things in it that are going to be divisive, like, I mean, watch the opening, and the litmus test is if you can stand Courtney Love's performance, you're going to be fine with the rest of this.
Yeah.
But I just wonder if part of it is because it's going after two audiences who have no overlap. There's an audience who would appreciate a really cine-literate spaghetti western spoof, and there's an audience who want to see the Pogues play gunslingers. And I just don't think there's a crossover.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It also becomes that weird tradition of the British Western as well,
yes,
which is a very interesting sort of weird little subgenre of Western, really. Where you've got things like The Singer Not the Song with Dirk Bogarde and John Mills in the 50s, which is just.
I mean, we're talking about westerns that have an air of suppressed kink.
Yeah,
there's one.
Dirk Bogarde in leather trousers.
Yes,
is definitely up there. Yeah, but I mean, lambasted on its release, but now a bit of a cult. of cult interest, especially now what we know of Dirk Bogart's sexuality as well.
Yeah.
But then, we were making spaghetti westerns or co-financing some spaghetti westerns in the 70s. There's a great one, which I have to say almost in a sort of Alexi Sale voice, A Town Called Bastard, which is... which it just sounds like an Alexi Sale punchline, doesn't it?
Maybe that's the cross-cultural aspect, that you've asked yourself, where is the British influence in this movie? And it's named after what is probably an Alexi Sale joke.
I mean, A Town Called Bastard, again, Dudley Sutton as a mute gunslinger. I mean, who doesn't want to watch that,
Yes.
And I'm sure it's got a hearse driving about, which just reminds me of Doctor Who, Greatest Show in the Galaxy.
Oh, yeah.
So there's some weird sort of... I love that about spaghetti westerns. It goes, okay, this is the setup. Now let's go one bit weirder. Let's go one step further.
Yeah.
This is the actual let's just balls to the wall out the weirdness straight to hell, isn't it?
But again, it's like that image of the hearse driving around. You could put that straight into Straight to Hell and it wouldn't stick out. It is proof that this is reacting to something real that's actually in those movies.
Yeah. And although, as we say, there's no sort of crossover audience, these things were still getting made, So, I mean, I think this would be a good double bill with Comic Strip Presents Fistful of Traveller's Checks.
Yes.
Seeing as we're talking about Alexi Sale and that. I mean, that is almost like the support feature to this film, really. Yeah. Again, another idea of let's get a load of eccentric people, plop them down in Spain on an old spaghetti western set and let them pretend to play Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah.
And then throw in Ade Edmondson in a matador outfit and a very thick Yorkshire accent.
Well, that's the thing, when you said in terms of A Town Called Bastard, when you said Dudley Sutton plays a mute gunslinger, part of me did think, now, did he have lines and then they heard his American accent? Is that what happened to you?
Well, he might have been drinking as well at that point, so they must just thought he can't remember his lines. Let's just make him mute. There's a great story about Dudley Sutton, which I probably bored a lot of people with. I don't know if I've told it before, so apologies. But he used to share a flat with Mike Pratt, the star of Randall and Hopkirk Deceased.
Oh, yeah.
In the 60s. And he said to Mike Pratt one day, he said, that program you're doing, that Randall and Hopkirk, he said, I could do with a part on that. I'm really skint. Nobody's employing me because my drinking's getting a bit out of hand. And he turned around, he said, Dudley, you were in it last week.
Wow.
It's genius, isn't it? You completely forget what you were doing the week before.
I think
that's the mark of a true alcoholic, isn't it?
This is a good place to have that story in, because I cannot think of many other opportunities we'll have to talk about Dudley Sutton on pop screen.
I mean, there should be a podcast just devoted to Dudley Sutton, I think.
Yes, join us in 2023 when we launch the Sutton Files here at the as well as our introductory podcast for people who aren't familiar with Dudley Sutton, called Sutton Who.
Brilliant.
I feel like we probably can't go far beyond that, can we? That's the end of the show.
You can't peak that. You can't top that.
No
Definitely
way.
not. Just just do laps around the garden now. That's what I'd do. I do want to just throw in very quickly, if we're talking about if by any chance viewers do watch this and go, I must check out Straight to Hell, and then think, what other weird British westerns are there? And like I said, we've got Fistful of Traveller's Checks. That's a good one. There's also a very weird one on YouTube called The Ballad of Kid Divine,
right?
Which was made in sort of about 89, 90, something like that. It's got the most bizarre cast. It's up in Italy.
Yeah.
and it's got Jesse Birdsall that used to play Marcus Tandy in El Dorado. He's Kid Divine, the Cockney cowboy. Neil Morrissey and Martin Clunes are some Irish bounty hunters.
And that'll be before Men Behaving Badly, right?
Yeah, I think so, or just before. I'm not sure now. And also Michael Elphick.
Speaking of amazing drunks.
Another fantastic drunk, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's a snake oil salesman and assassin. And it's only about 50 minutes long, but if you are watching, it's my sort of dream supporting feature. I mean, you could have a perfect night of watching Straight to Hell, Fistful of Traveller Checks, The Ballad of Kid Divine, The Cockney Cowboy, and just that's it. Get that and a bottle of tequila, and you sorted, I think.
I've never seen Edgar Wright's A Fistful of Fingers, which
no, I've not seen that either. That's another one that needs to be discussed in this context as well. Yeah, but I've not seen that either. I believe it's on Rare Film. I believe it's free to view on there, so it's worth checking out. But I've not got around to checking it out.
Well, I think that's about covered everything, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Only one other thing I want to throw in is there's a moment where Kate O'Riordan starts singing Danny Boy and everybody joins in, but they were about to fight at one point. That is just a night out in Liverpool. If you want to stop a fight, just sing Danny Boy.
Yes, I think John Bishop does something similar with the song Tarvins on Doctor Who this week, didn't he?
I just walk out of here. He's very good in that. He's very good. But that's a different podcast as well, isn't it?
It's a different podcast, yeah. But yes, listeners, if you've enjoyed what you've listened to, don't forget you can donate to our Patreon and get a bonus episode every month. I am currently editing a episode on Crock of Gold, Julian Temple's documentary about Shane McGowan, to partner with this episode.
That rings a bell.
No idea who's on it. No idea who's on it.
No.
Some
annoying person. Yeah, some twat. Some pretentious wankers on there, just banging on, boring the arse off everybody.
So yes, that's available, as well as our other movie podcast, Director's Lottery, and my twice weekly Doctor Who reviews as well. But
well worth it.
I thank you. But
I'll pay you the £5 after.
Well, you should be paying me some money anyway, because it's on our Patreon. But
it's on the Patreon, yeah.
But yes, until next week, listeners, that's been your lot from Pop Screen. I've been Graham.
And Gringos, I've been Mark Cunliffe.
And we'll see you next week.